Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Pelvis. I'm Laura Haraka, a somatic practitioner, breathwork facilitator, and someone who's been on the healing journey myself. I know what it's like to live with chronic symptoms and feel disconnected from your body, and I also know how powerful it can be when we start to listen, slow down, and heal from the inside out. On this podcast, we talk about the mind-body connection, nervous system healing, pelvic health, and all the messy, beautiful layers that come within learning to trust your body again. Whether you're brand new to this work or deep in your process, I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in. So welcome, everyone. Today, we have an incredible panel of experts who are truly leaders in the pelvic healing space. So I am honored to be joined by Callie, Michael, and Rachel, each bringing deep expertise, compassion, and insight into the pelvic pain and recovery world. So we're going to dive into the questions you ask most often about pelvic pain conditions, the ones that feel confusing, frustrating, or overwhelming. So our goal today is just to give you some clarity, perspective, and practical guidance so you can better understand your body and your healing journey. So I'm happy to have you all here with me today.
Thanks for having
us.
Thank you.
So let's just dive right in. We'll get to the first question.
Do you want us to introduce ourselves, Laura, just in case people don't know us?
Sure, let's do it. Go ahead, Callie. Why don't you start?
Sorry. Hey, everyone. I'm Callie. I am a registered dietitian specializing in bladder health. I struggled with conditions like interstitial cystitis, pelvic floor dysfunction, and overactive bladder for the first 25 years of my life, and I now consider myself healed from those symptoms and conditions. So now I help people with the same symptoms and conditions to really overcome them and live their best life.
Thank you. That's awesome. How about you, Rachel? Go ahead.
Sure, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I am Rachel Goffman. I am a doctor of physical therapy and pelvic pain coach, and I help women heal chronic pelvic pain through a mind-body approach while returning to living a full and empowered life in the process. I always say that, it chose me. I didn't choose it, it chose me, as so many of us probably relate to. I was diagnosed with piano neuralgia, IC, unprovoked vulvodynia, other diagnoses as well. I like to say, I've had every possible sensation in the pelvis that people don't want. And I am now also completely chronic pelvic pain free. And it is my life's work and mission to help others get to this place too.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Okay, Michael, how about you?
Yeah, like Rachel said, well, I'm Michael Hodge, and I also went through a lot of things that I now help people with. I specifically help men with pelvic, urinary, and sexual issues. And I help them go to the root cause with a nervous system focused approach that is holistic and natural to bring safety back into their body and let the symptoms dissolve now that the messages have actually been heard.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to have a man in this space with us all. So my name is Laura Haraka. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and breathwork facilitator, and I healed from over 10 different diagnoses of pelvic pain, from IC to pudendal neuralgia to PGAD, and the list goes on and on and on. Like Rachel, I've had almost every symptom under the sun in my pelvis. So my goal is to teach people that they can heal from chronic pain. There is a way out, and they don't have to suffer and struggle in silence. So I'm so happy to have us all here today under one Zoom call. And let's start and get to these questions from our viewers. The first question is, how can we do activities that soothe us and our nervous system without intending to fix the symptoms? Great question. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Rachel.
Okay. So I first just want to validate like how normal it is to struggle with this, right? I think it is the most human thing in the world to want to feel better and to do things to feel better. And that is just like, just first off, so valid. What I want to offer is that I think it's important to first kind of like allow for and work with the part of you that is like fighting against the current reality and wants things to change. To give some airtime to that part. And that can be done several different ways. Ways I like to offer folks is EFT tapping or journaling or just connecting with that part and letting it tantrum, like going off on how unfair, how it needs to be different, X, Y, Z. And just like giving that part like some validation and saying, yeah, that makes sense, right? Of course you do. And then kind of coming in with self energy or like a parent part or the part of you that knows that like it's not your job to fix this right now. And let that part know that you're aligned in your mission of feeling better. Like you're aligned on that, right? But what actually has to happen in order to feel better in the long term is to let things be as they are in the short term, right? And then gently kind of like aligning and then redirecting the part to your actual job in the moment, which is to respond with safety. And kind of holding that part with compassion and care and letting it know, like, it's okay. I'm going to show you that it's safe to be here right now. And we're going to get there eventually. But for now, things can be as they are.
Nice, nice. Does anyone want to add to that? Oh, it feels that's complete. I'm just going to add one other thing, if that's
I'm
okay.
also going to add one thing. You go first. I'll add it again.
Oh, okay. So when I was healing from chronic pelvic pain, every time I would do my breath work, it wasn't with the intention to fix the pain. So I just basically reframed it, saying something like, I'm going to do this because it feels nurturing, or because I deserve care, or because I am doing this to support my nervous system. And I kind of think about things a lot in analogies. So if I was a little kid who fell and scraped their knee, I would want to give that child a hug. Now, that hug is not going to heal the wound or stitch it back together, but that hug is going to help regulate our nervous system. So when that hug comes, a lot of the times the fear drops and it creates conditions for the body to do what it naturally knows how to do, heal.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to add one more thing to what I said before and what you said. I'm just going to name, like, I'm somebody who is very resistant to allowing and to letting things be as they are. And even though I knew the theory, the practice felt really hard. And I had a lot of like resistance to that. And I think a concept that really supported me was the concept of like lagging results, that like trusting that the work was working and the inputs were inputting, but the output / the outcome was coming. I just couldn't quite see it yet. And I love, Laura, what you said about analogies. I love analogies as well. And I would think about it like, you know how you go to the gym and you like lift some weights, and if you lift weights and you expect after 3 sessions of lifting weights that you're going to be big and strong and or look different, be stronger, whatever, you would quit, right? And never get there. And so the way I think about it, and one more analogy is like, if you plant a seed and you look at it and you're like, oh, you're not a flower, guess we're going to pull it out and quit. Like it'll never become a flower. And so just there's so many places in our experience outside of this work where we can see lagging results that require us to be in the process longer than we want to be in order to get the result that we want. And so thinking about like, if I am putting in the inputs, the outputs are coming, lagging results, but the outputs are coming. It is not my job to force it to be now, but to trust that if I'm doing the inputs, the outputs are coming. Okay, now I'm done.
Absolutely love that. We had some great analogies. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. What are some activities that soothe the nervous system? Who wants to take that one? Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many activities. I'll start with some things to actually consider, and then ultimately anything that just takes you out of the fast-paced go, go, go mindset, it's going to help you. I mean, it could be like picking up a ball and just rolling it around in your hand. It can be walking outside. But yeah, some specific activities. Breath work is the one I mentioned first because it seems to move people into a different nervous system state the fastest in many cases. And it's really easy to do. So you can find a guided breath work online or just do something on your own. Um, I would say somatic practices, there are various kinds that ultimately are just moving your body in a way that's natural. And it helps your body to do what it already wants to do, but your conscious mind is blocking it due to some kind of defense mechanism or lack of safety or feeling self-conscious about the movement or something. Things like singing and dancing are really good. However, I know whenever I was in a lot of pain and feeling crappy, the idea of like, hey, you should just go dance right now. Like, there's no way in hell I'm doing that right now. It's not something that you actually feel like doing, but ultimately it's very good. Nervous system regulation, it's about flexibility. It's not just relaxation and calming and chilling out. I think that's a big misconception. I need to stop everything. I need to meditate. I need to slow down. Actually, you might be in a very frozen state, more of a freeze response. And going for a run and getting anger through your body, as an example, moving it through, or punching a punching bag, doing kickboxing, doing something very physical, making sounds, can be really good. So it can look like a lot of different things, to be honest with you. Those are some initial activities that come to mind. Maybe someone else wants to mention some.
I can share what's been helping me, on my journey. I feel like my audience usually resonates with giving examples of what real people are doing. So one of the main things for me was really slowing down my mornings. I used to get up, check my phone immediately, feed my cats, and then go, go, go. And it's like, no, now I'm waking up. I'm not looking at my phone for the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day. I'm going downstairs, grabbing my coffee, and then doing some sort of exercise. Some days I do tapping. Sometimes I do a guided meditation. Sometimes I'm just taking a couple deep breaths on my own and doing some positive affirmations. So for me, that was really, really helpful. And then I'm another person where I like to move my body, kind of like Michael was saying. I like to go do a bar class and just kind of get that energy out somehow. I'm also not a fan of the like go sing or dance or like do something like that. It's just not my thing. So that has been really helpful. And then a lot of my clients, this isn't really a me thing yet. I still hold out hope for it, but journaling has been really helpful for my clients with bladder symptoms and getting some feelings out and getting processing some old emotions that are stuck.
Nice.
Yes,
Good,
I'm
Rachel.
gonna. Oh, so sorry. Just ice fell from the roof. We had we're during a massive snowstorm, so that just scared me. Anyway, so first, agreeing with everything that Michael and Callie said. Where Callie was kind of going is kind of where I want to jump off, which is I think we often ask about soothing in a way of like, they're there, like just be calm, right? And I find that what we often also really need is actual self-protection, right? Which could be things like radical self-honesty and kind of looking at what are the threats in my life that I could be kind of suppressing or repressing, and supporting yourself and actually making changes in your life that might need to be made, or having conversations that might have to be had. And first step might be like journaling, EFT tapping, ways to kind of self-connect to those truths, right? But I find we can soothe ourselves all day long for literally years, right? But if we're not actually creating true, authentic safety in our lives, we're going to be just doing practices for forever to try to feel better for now. And that's not really going to support us in the long term. There's a time and a place for everything. But I think we can get very caught up in like the tools and practices for soothing in a way that doesn't move the needle in the way that I think is truly the most effective for healing. But again, we need both, just making sure we're not forgetting the underlying stuff, right?
I love that. What great points all three of you had. And it's just so interesting. I don't know how many of you know my story, but one of the ways I healed from chronic pain was dancing. And it just goes to show different, things help, different people. And it brought so much joy and connection to my life. And I really think, it's the intention behind everything we do. Like, does this help my body feel softer? Does it help me move slower? Does it help me feel more connected?
Love it.
Okay, so let's move on to question number 3. So, question number 3 is, how does recovery feel? Do the symptoms go up and down before they go down completely? Ooh, go ahead, Rachel. You're ready to jump in on this one.
So I think it sounds like a process question, right? In the process of recovery, how do things feel? The answer is it is not the same for everyone. I have to first say that. For me, it was not the way that I would have liked it, right? But it's never linear, I'll say that, right? For me, I honestly, so not everyone has the same degree and consistency of symptoms. My symptoms were all day, every day, 10 out of 10 to start. And so for me, it looked like still all the time symptoms, and then like one rung down on like a baseline. So say I was a 10 all the time, then I'd be like a 9 with a couple of flares. And then I was like an 8 with a couple of flares, and then a 7 with a couple of flares, so on and so forth. Now, as I got towards like what I now can say is like closer to the end of my journey, I had some of my worst flares of my entire experience. And now I understand where that is. At the time, I had no idea. And so I freaked out and stayed there longer than I needed to because I was so scared. And so I say this not to scare people, but just to prepare them. If that is their experience, nothing has gone wrong. You are right on track. And your nervous system is just trying to keep you safe in the old way of being. And your job is the same, which is to recognize what's happening, respond with safety, and know that you're on track. So I'm just going to name that as from my own experience. And I see it with some clients as well. Listen, some clients, they just go down, 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 a couple of flares here and there. Love that. But if you're not like that, don't worry. You're still okay. You're going to be okay.
Love that. Love that. Does anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, so I just like to use the analogy that healing is like a game of chutes and ladders for most people. It feels like you're progressing. You're like, wow, my symptoms are going down. This is so awesome. And then boom, you go down the chute. And a lot of people think that they're failing, but I think flare-ups are major opportunities. And although they are extremely uncomfortable and your mind wants to do everything possible to make it go away, you're actually closer to what I call root causes than ever when you're in those moments. And you're really close to this place of surrender so that you can actually notice that which is needing to be let go of, that your nervous system is, your body is basically screaming at you about. I typically find that as people are getting better too, I hear a very similar kind of story when it's really on its way out. This is how it was for me as well. They kind of forget that they're having symptoms anymore. They'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that like I even had pelvic pain for a week and I had a little bit today. That was kind of weird, but all right. And you're just moving on with your life. And that's not the case for everyone, I imagine, but I just want to relay that. That's what I hear from a lot of people.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. And I wanted to just share a personal experience that happened to me recently. I've been mostly pain-free for the past 5 years. If I have a really big life stressor come up, yeah, my bladder pain might flare a little bit. But recently I had a flare that lasted longer than they typically last. So typical to me would be like an hour or two. This flare stayed for a couple days. And I'm not going to lie, I got in my head about it a little bit. And there was a little bit of fear there. Like, oh, what if, I went down those what ifs for a little bit. And eventually, and I knew this was, neuroplastic pain, mind body pain, because when I went to an exercise class, my symptoms disappeared. So that to me, I was like, okay, yeah, there's my evidence. And, I kept doing things that I enjoy. I kept, I don't like to say distracting myself, but doing things that I really enjoy engaging in. And the symptoms finally disappeared. And now that I can reflect on it, I just want to show people. I mean, I've been virtually symptom free for years, but things like this happen. Your life is never going to be stress free. But once you know what is at the root cause of these symptoms, your fear decreases and your confidence in navigating these situations increases.
When we start knowing we're having progress, our flares become less frequent, and sometimes they happen for a less amount of time. And I'll share with all of you, I recently had a flare 2 weeks ago in the movie theater. I had an important meeting the next morning, and I had to literally sit there and ask myself, oh my God, what's happening? But my brain did go to fear first because I want to normalize it. It's really normal to be like, oh no, but I seem to get off the I know train a lot quicker than I used to. And I literally was able to connect with what I was feeling, do a little somatic tracking, and within honestly 20 minutes, the flare was gone. So I was pretty lucky it didn't last. But it's flares can happen even when you're healed from chronic pain conditions. Okay, moving on to the next question. And this one is for Michael. Why does male pelvic pain show up?
That depends on the person as to why it's happening to them. But in most cases, it is brain and nervous system created due to some threat response. There are stressors, triggers, and the body begins to produce pain as a protective mechanism, as a signal. But there's so many different stories. I have people who will say there was an initiating incident, like I had sex and then I had this weird feeling and then they got scared and then they went to the urologist and then there's a catastrophizing and a neural circuitry that gets linked. For other people, they don't even see an initiating incident. But if we look back at some kind of emotion or nervous system reactivity that has been taking place, so whenever you're in a long-term fight, flight, or freeze state, your body can produce pelvic floor tension. It can produce pain in your body. It can produce overactive bladder. It can produce digestive issues. Basically, anything that the autonomic nervous system is running inside of you is at play. And so it shows up in men. Similarly to women, there's actually not a big difference. The way that you help a man or a woman to heal their pelvic pain is basically the same. Anatomy doesn't affect it that much. Some nuances I will say, though, is that along with pelvic pain, you can have a lot of other kinds of symptoms that will appear, which also just shows that it's brain and nervous system created versus from a specific injury or a pathogen in the body. So some guys have hard flaccid, which is where the penis doesn't go back to its normal flaccid state, testicular pain, prostate or rectal pain. So there are like some male anatomy specific things that can happen as well alongside that, or the pain can show up in the perineum, it can show up in the penis, it can show up in the testicle. But ultimately, there is a need to slow down and, yes, begin regulating your nervous system like we've talked about. I like to start there because instead of like, I got to figure out this, I've got to figure out what's going on. They've already been in the fixing and figuring out state for a long time. They've probably already been to a lot of doctors and talked to ChatGPT like 10 times a day and everything. So they've been there. Let's just actually let everything settle, let the dust settle for a little bit and actually drop into the body. Even though you don't want to go there, that's going to be the place that will help you to regulate and then hear the message of why this is here ultimately. And that could come through by way of journaling, by way of talking to a therapist, by way of just being in silence, sitting under a tree. Ultimately, something will come through and shifts will be made. And your body doesn't need to produce the pain any longer because there's safety and you're more balanced and harmonious. So that was a big question, but I mean, ultimately the way you go at it, I think is the same for men or women. Yeah.
Any of the ladies want to comment, or we're just going to leave that one with Michael?
So I love Michael's response. I totally agree. I think ultimately it's all created equal from a nervous system lens. I just want to add, I've worked with a couple of men in the past, and the only real big difference that I see is on the identity pieces. Now, I think it always affects identity, often pelvic pain, whether you're male, female, non-binary, any of the options for gender. But I think there are some unique experiences for men and from either performance perspective or identity as a man that might need some addressing, that might be different than for women.
Yeah, actually, we'll mention it briefly then. I appreciate that, Rachel. I was talking to someone about this last night, and yeah, if anything happens to a man's pelvic floor, anything close to their manhood, their penis, their testicles, they freak the hell out. Like they will do anything to make sure they're able to have sex and feel like they're masculine, feel like they have that level of virility, I guess. And yeah, so they go in major freak out mode, like way more than anything else. Like if they have weird headaches, or if they have digestive issues, or a thing in their ankle, it's like level 3. But anything related to this part of their body is like level 9. I actually think that makes the symptoms come on harder and perpetuate the whole situation a lot more. That's why I like telling my story so vulnerably and just being like, yeah, this is what's going on. This is my penis and this is that. And here's talking about, masturbation and talking about like, this is the reality of your life. It's okay. There's so much shame around being a man, basically. Like if you say penis, it's actually shadow banned significantly more than saying vagina on social media. I've been researching this because I'm about to create a campaign called Free Your Manhood, because men really feel like they can't speak up, and just it's not normal to like talk about who you are as a man because it looks like you're a pervert, even though you're just in your human body. So.
So appreciate you sharing that. And I'm so glad you're creating a community around this. I think a lot about, in general, pelvic health is super underserved, and there's so much shame around it. And I think there's like almost no spaces for men to be specifically spoken to and about these symptoms in this way. And I think it is really like such a need for so many people. And Michael, I'm so glad that you're doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. When we share our stories, we normalize this for people. And then they're able to talk about it. And when we talk about something, the shame dies.
One of my favorite quotes is like, shame dies when stories are told in safe places. Like 1000%.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's go to question number 5. And I love this question. I get this one all the time. How much time per day should we practice mind-body techniques? I think it's such a great question because it can be very confusing for people. And for me, having a routine felt really safe. So I'll share with you what I did. I basically had a 40-minute routine in the morning. I had some type of emotional regulation practice, whether it be just sensing into my emotions, a somatic approach, or journaling. I would take a bath, a very warm bath, and then I would do 20 minutes of breath work because I found breath work to be very regulating for me. It was kind of like a reset for my nervous system. And again, at night, I would do 20 minutes of breath work because it really made me feel good. It helped support me. And throughout the day, it was not structured. I basically checked in with myself 3 to 4 times a day and just asked myself, what am I feeling? And felt it in my body. And also throughout the day, I just found moments of joy by connecting with my kids, dancing, friends, even having a cup of tea. And the most important thing I think I did during the day was practice mindfulness. And I put that into every single part of my day. If I was making my kids lunches and I was cutting strawberries, literally it would be, oh, how do they feel? Can I hear the knife cut the strawberry? What does it smell like? I'd feel my hands under the water washing the strawberry. And you might think that that was a lot of work, but it really wasn't, because I feel like mindfulness, joy, and connecting to what I was feeling are things that I use now, even though I don't have chronic pain anymore. So having some type of schedule, but not overdoing it. If I missed a day because that morning I had to leave early for a soccer game for my daughter, it wasn't the end of the world. So I didn't want to make healing a full-time job, but I did incorporate these mini exercises as mindfulness, joy, maybe a little breathing during the day, just to support myself. And that's what worked for me. Anyone else want to add to that? Go ahead, Rachel.
It's so interesting to hear everyone's different experiences. Laura, I love that you shared that. Mine was way less structured than yours. Certainly not 40 minutes a day. I also, to be so honest, I'm not so practice tools heavy. I love that they exist. I use them kind of as a grab bag of like what I need for self-support. But to be so honest, a lot of my healing journey was during being a grad student in like a doctoral physical therapy program where I had no time, like basically at all. And really a lot of my work was happening in real time of like self-connection, self-support, self-validation, like really supporting myself in like gently redirecting my attention back to what I'm doing, tending to the part of me that's like, while I'm trying to study. Like a lot of it was kind of living, right, while helping kind of reorient my attention through a lens of compassion. I would certainly do like a journal speak practice, EFT tapping when I got home and wanted to absolutely have a meltdown, which I did do. And I was very mindful to intentionally support myself through like high sensation times through having a pain flare plan and for really orienting to like joyful tools and support. So like funny YouTube videos, a funny TV show, like giving myself little inputs. But to be so honest, I was in a very high intensity time while trying to heal. So really a lot of it was like lowering the intensity of whatever I was doing. And I know, Laura, you spoke about kind of little parts of how you were doing that too in a way. I think I didn't think about it so clearly like that, if that makes any sense. It was more like integrative.
Yeah.
I relate to that too, Rachel. And it's funny, I work with a lot of people across the spectrum. We have like the busy moms and people that are really working hard at their job or, you know, however that shows up. And then there's other people. I have a client who she has a routine, kind of like Laura, but it might be even more of a routine where she does an hour of practices in the morning, she does an hour at night, and it's just very consistent. And I admire her for that because I'm not that person. I could never do that. I would lose my mind, but I'm more of like a, yeah, grab bag, like take what I need when I need it. And I think it's just whatever works for the specific person.
So it's so interesting how we all have different routines that we had, whether they were very like, throughout the day or they were more structured. And it just goes to show that healing doesn't have to be cookie cutter. Like that routine really helped me feel safe. And I will also share that routine changed. It didn't stay. I had that routine for about 3 months and then I shifted my routine to see what felt good, what was working. So it's just so interesting how everyone has a different method for healing, and you really have to choose what's best for you.
And I'm so glad that you kind of named that and clarified that for folks because, first of all, I think it's liberating and helpful to see there are so many ways to get there. I also want to honor and validate how frustrating it is to one, like, this is the way you get there path. And I know that I found that very confusing and frustrating. But just to validate what Laura said, like, the mechanism is safety. And there's so many ways to create safety for yourself. And like, how can you kind of think about for yourself, what do I need? How can I support myself? And really, like, again, I want to think about it as good news. There's so many ways to get there.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So the next question, and I don't know much about this one because I've never had one of these, but the question is the Aura Ring a good way to monitor the stress response? I have some ideas, but if one of you has more insight, I'd love to hear from you.
I wore an Aura ring for about 2 years and I stopped. I no longer wear it because I was hyperfixating on the data. And I think a lot of people in our communities, do that. I think the perfectionist in me came out and I was just really clinging to that data. So I feel like I'm doing a lot better now that I'm not constantly checking it, and it just like took a load of pressure off of me.
Yeah, I've never used one, but from what I've heard about it, kind of what Callie said, I would imagine it would only increase hypervigilance. I also think there's an element of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like if you see your readiness score is low, like you already like know you're not going to have a good day and then you don't have a good day. And so I'm always curious, like, how is that really supporting you in shifting these patterns? Is it keeping you in fear? Is it keeping you in worry? Has this like little measure on this ring decided that like you're now going to feel terrible? Like what kind of seeds is it planting? That was kind of my first thought, but what Callie said makes so much sense, and I would imagine it's challenging.
Yeah, I love that because there were days where it would be like a very low readiness score, and I'm like, what do you mean? I feel pretty ready for the day. Like, should I
Yeah.
go back to bed?
It's like impending doom where you're like, I thought I was fine, but am I not fine? Am I not
Yeah.
fine? How am I not fine? And our brains are already hypervigilant to any sensations that could be threatening. Like, gosh, we're already like expanding that.
Or you
So,
look at your sleep score and it's like, oh, I didn't sleep that well. I didn't realize that. I felt okay.
right, right. Yeah,
I was
we're in
going to
agreement.
throw in one potential benefit just because a client told me this recently. He used the Aura Ring for a few months. He said it was like training wheels. And the reason why it helped him, though, was being a skeptic to this whole mind body connection. He was able to see his heart rate variability. He was seeing how stressors would actually change his biometrics. And he was also seeing the effect on his symptoms. So it actually helped him to believe the things that we're talking about because he had scientific proof. And I have a lot of men who are very intellectual and like need the science. But also it's a trap beyond that point. Personally, I think it then becomes a trap. And people probably stick around with it too long.
Yeah, I love that. And then my question always is like, well, what if it didn't change? What if symptoms didn't change? What if HRV didn't change? Like thinking back to lagging results. Like, what if we're thinking about like the changes may not happen for 6 months to who knows, right? And being in the process while your data is saying nothing is changing can feel very threatening. And it's like, why would you do that if you're looking for that result? So I think it would be very hard to be fully, not fully, but outcome independent enough to stay in it if you're not getting that change. It's awesome that he did, but it's like, what if you don't?
Yeah.
It's also
And he would,
it,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it's an expensive investment to get these rings, and there's a monthly fee that you have to keep paying. So it just depends. Are you willing to make that investment?
Yeah. And just a last thing on his story specifically, too, he was noticing more of the adverse effects of his life on him versus checking if his healing practices were improving him essentially more so. But I agree. Yeah. Nonetheless.
Like I said, I've never used one of these rings, but I think anytime we use any tool, it's about asking yourself, does this tool help me feel safe and empowered or more anxious? For me, my body was the tool. to judge how I was feeling. So one of the things I did was every time I walked through a doorway or every time I washed my hands, because I felt like, okay, those are two things I'm going to do a lot of during the day. I would ask myself, oh, are my shoulders up? How's my jaw? What does my body feel like right now? So I kind of used my body to decide what state my nervous system was in. I didn't use one of these rings. I guess we're all on the same page with the ring. Okay, next question. How do I stop thinking about my symptoms and monitoring them 24/7? Oh, that's a question I'm sure you guys all get a lot. Anyone want to take that? Good, Rachel.
If no one else wants to go first, I feel bad just like jumping in. Okay.
Go for it.
And so the first thing I want to again validate is like this is the most normal thing in the world, right? Your brain is going to want to be like a freaking magnet laser focused that part of the body because the perception is something is wrong, right? And when something is wrong, your brain's like, oh, I need to tell you all about it. Let me make sure that you know all the things that are happening there. But we know, right, that's actually not helpful. And that's perpetuating that fear, worry, focus cycle. And so the first thing I want to offer is I don't think the expectation should be that you stop. I think the expectation should be that you relate to that part of you differently. Shaka, we're back to parts work. So I think there's a part of us, right, that is like really good at ruminating and scanning on those sensations. And so it's first noticing that part is doing a job it thinks is really important. It thinks that you need to know all the things that are happening. And so it's really just noticing like that part is trying to help you, but it's misguided in the way that it's kind of doing its job. And so it's letting that part know, like, thank you so much for trying to help, but actually our job is not to do that. It's not really our business. What's currently happening with sensations, our job is to respond to safety and reorient our attention to literally anything else, something safer. Right. And so I think about it first as like shifting your relationship to the presence of that part / reaction and letting it be there, but just not letting it drive your experience. And over time, the more that you're reorienting from like, it's safe that you're here, it's safe this is happening, and we're not going to stay doing this, right? The less it'll kind of consume and take over. But I think the expectation of it just not happening is what often keeps us stuck. Especially if you have OCD, which I did. So anyway.
OCD over here as well.
Yeah, our brain, is really trying to protect us by having this monitoring. And one of the things I would do, or I tell my clients to do, is we can't like force ourselves, stop thinking about it and judging ourselves. That's going to create more tension in the body. But even just to call it out for what it is can be really helpful. Like, I notice I'm monitoring. Thank you, brain. I know you're trying to help. And then redirecting it by doing something fun, doing a task, moving your body, maybe doing some breath work. So it's just being aware you're doing it, acknowledging it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. I think that's a big piece. And then picking another action. And I really believe doing that over time will really create a new habit. So the more you start living and picking another task, despite the symptoms, the less important they start even becoming to your brain. And over time, the attention starts to loosen, soften. Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I would just add in that exactly everything y'all said. To when you're experiencing that hypervigilance, the scanning, the crazy thoughts, the discomfort in the body, and of course, everyone's like, stop, slow down, if possible, at least checking, taking a moment, but really asking, what do I need right now? What do I need right now? And it might be like, I really want to like go outside, but I can't because I have to finish this work. Or like, I really need something to drink, or I really want to have fun, but I feel lonely, or whatever it is. So you're actually getting closer to what's really happening here. because the body is screaming at you for something that's usually beyond just a physical situation. And so if you go just a little bit more into it, it's kind of like walking into a room with blaring speakers and it's like so loud and it's intense. But if you just stay there for a few minutes, the writing's on the wall for you to read.
Yeah, so true. I think it's so interesting how we all have a different input to add to the same question. And I love that. I love that. So the next question is basically about bladder symptoms. And someone would like an explanation of chronic unexplained symptoms. Why bladder pain?
This person submitted this question to me, and I asked her if she could be more specific. And she said, "It seems that many people with somatic illnesses have so many random symptoms that can't be explained, including the bladder here. I would love to get a better understanding of differentiating between these in your head symptoms and real issues that should be pushed for exploration at a physician's office."
Do you want to take that question?
I mean, yeah, I definitely, I always want to start out by saying like, yes, get the test done. We need to make sure there's nothing medically or structurally wrong with you that needs to be addressed. I think that's the first step on this journey is getting all those tests done and ruling out that structural cause. That's my first thought. Does anybody want to chime in there?
I agree with you. I don't want to see anyone have some infection in their body. I always say, go to the doctor, get a test, because that alone can help you feel safer. I even tell people to keep the strips in their bathroom just to, make sure it's not a UTI because we really don't want to miss anything structurally going on in the body. I think it's really important.
Yeah, definitely going to a physician, getting a workup is always first. And then the explanation of how are there all these random things like how can my skin get discolored or how can I have tingling feelings or pain and all these crazy things. I actually have a document on my computer about like weird symptoms and I get new ones that I have to add to it every week because I'm just so fascinated. But it's pretty simple if you look at how the nervous system is dysregulated and disorderly, and you look at how the autonomic nervous system is just the brain spread out throughout the entire body, processing so many things for us all the time. The musculoskeletal system, digestion and cardiovascular system, genitourinary system. You're not thinking about any of this. You're not thinking about if you're filtering your urine and you're getting ready to pee. And ultimately, any of these parts of you are fair play for weird symptoms and sensations to be produced and experienced via the brain.
So I agree with everybody, obviously. I also want to add, I know, Callie, you didn't finish answering the question yet, but I just want to add that before you go on. Just in the way that she framed the question, I think there is a little bit of a perception that if they are neuroplastic, then they're in your head. And I just want to, again, I know Michael kind of just talked about that, but we're really reiterating that all sensations are real, all pain is real. The question is, does they need to be medically attended to, right? Or are we just doing mind-body work, or are we doing a bit of both, right? I also am making the assumption, and I always ask people this if they ever want to work with me, like, I assume you've first gone to the doctor. I am not your first stop on the train of healing your chronic bladder pain, pelvic pain, whatever you have going on. And so I think we are having a baseline understanding that a proper medical screen was appropriately done. If that has not happened, yes, please go to your doctor. Go to your doctor. Then come find us later when you haven't had a proper answer. And I'm so sorry if you end up with us. And we're happy to help you.
I think a lot of people struggle because there's so many conditions out there, and then you'll see it on social media. It's like, oh, these celebrities are coming out that they have endometriosis. Like maybe that's what's going on with me. And I think that increases the level of fear. So I always encourage people, like if you want to rule endometriosis out, go have a conversation with your gynecologist, your urogynecologist, whoever that may be. Maybe they think the testing is warranted for you, maybe they don't. But I think just getting to that point and having that conversation with the right practitioner is important.
I want to add one other thing, and this was from my conversation with Dr. Hanscom when he came on my podcast, that these symptoms that you're having, even though they're unexplained physically, they're actually explained. There is an explanation for neuroplastic symptoms, that there's repressed emotions, overwhelm, like Michael talks about, the root cause. There is a reason why your body reacted and your nervous system was staying in a high activated state for a really long time. And those things create symptoms in our body.
Yes. And I completely agree. I mean, I speak about this a lot because I think it's just important that I need to validate that I think a lot of women have had the experience of being gaslit by their physicians and not getting a proper examination, not being appropriately screened and appropriately diagnosed, appropriately cared for, listened to, all the things. And so there's an element of not just skepticism, but like real like resistance to, but appropriate resistance to an explanation that sounds like that, right? And I want to validate, I was that person, right? I'm like, no, the doctors didn't do the proper thing. And so I just have to make space for, I think we all do in this space, make space for the validation of like, yes, you've had some pretty terrible medical experiences and you've had experiences of being not appropriately listened to or cared for. And skepticism makes sense. And it might just be true that you do feel like you need certain levels of medical diagnosis before you feel ready and willing to explore a mind-body approach, and that's okay. You get to decide as the patient. Like, you are the captain of your healing ship. Like, you get to decide, but I want it to be informed consent. Back to Callie's point about endo, for example. Endo is absolutely structural and real. And also, not everyone with endo has symptoms, right? And the symptoms that we're talking about. And so I think a lot of people feel they need the validation of an endo diagnosis, which is totally okay. But I think it's sold as if you get surgery, you will have resolution. And that doesn't happen for most people. And then we're kind of left with the patient has gone through this really invasive procedure without relief. And then they think something is like even more wrong with them. And so I think we have a big problem in pelvic health, right? We have a big problem. And I just want to, again, validate the complexity of really deciding on moving through a mind-body approach when there are so many questions that can be asked.
I think women are not validated by doctors. And it was something that I have still been I dealt with for a very long time to feel safe enough to go to a doctor again. We are gaslit by doctors, and not just by male doctors, women doctors. And it's really, that's not something that's going to make our bodies feel safe. So, always go to a doctor first. Make sure your symptoms, there's nothing going on in the body. I think that's like what everyone's been saying is the most important thing. Okay. Last question. We made it to the end. How do symptoms stay stuck once they start? Anyone want to grab that one?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, if we look at the neural circuitry component, we look at the nervous system state, and you're in this fight, flight, or freeze threat response state for a prolonged period of time, your symptoms will stay. And so I have clients who will have really high symptoms, and then they'll go on vacation for a week. And they're like, wow, my symptoms went down to like level 1 or 2. And they go back to work and like their regular life and their regular nervous system reactivity to the triggers that are being presented. And their symptoms essentially come back because they haven't worked with all of that yet to actually unlink that reactivity and bring safety back into the situation. So I don't really necessarily think there's anything broken or damaged in the body that's creating the stuckness of the symptoms, but that patterning in the brain and the nervous system, the biopsychosocial elements, all of it is ultimately creating that sense of linear consecutive time that your symptoms aren't going away. But again, like I was talking about overactive bladder yesterday, and until they do. So some people be like, well, will I ever go symptom free? I'm like, you were probably symptom free for like 3 hours once in the last year. You know, did you have like a day where you're just having so much fun and you lost yourself in something? And like, well, I didn't have to pee every 20 minutes like normal. You probably did. So that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, just bouncing off, Michael. Yeah, this element of like predictive coding, right? And this kind of triggered response in the nervous system where the brain learned a symptom, right? For whatever reason, whether it's there was a true infection that cleared, the brain never got the message that alarm can be shut off, or this cumulative stress and life stressors and all the things made your system sensitive. And then it learned this pattern of like something is wrong, something is wrong, something is wrong. But long story short, we have to break that loop, right? So there has to be a pattern interrupt of that expectation response. And so it is just like so annoying that we do have to learn to respond differently in order to interrupt this. We just like, that's just has to be true, whether there is like a big kind of underlying root cause of like a threat and nervous system dysregulation, or the symptom itself feels like the most dysregulating aspect. We do have to interrupt that fear, worry, focus cycle regardless.
I'll give you one last analogy, and you guys might not know this because you're a lot younger, but I don't know if you remember when they didn't have backup cameras in cars. So I'm just teasing you guys. So right now, I'm 54 years old, and every time I back up out of my driveway, I have a backup camera now. I turn my head around. It just was a learned pattern that my brain picked up. It still does that. And I've had a backup camera for quite some time. So there has been a gentle retraining that I've actually been doing when I go like this. Oh, Laura, in a nice, compassionate way, you have a backup camera. Let's try that. So there's been a shifting, and it's the same thing with pain. We keep looking at it, and because we're used to it, we've created these habits. So when we see that same cycle that's happening, we can gently interrupt it. And obviously pain's different than a backup camera, but it's something I'd like to try and use one of these days.
I have the opposite problem. I rely on the backup camera, and then when I'm in a car that doesn't have one, my instinct is to not look, and then I'm like, oh my God, I actually need to look here. So it's funny.
So funny. So, any last thoughts? So it looks like we have answered all the questions that were submitted from our clients. So hopefully this will help someone listening, and we'll get this video out for them. And I just want to thank all of you for coming today, giving up your time to share your expertise and your guidance. I know that everyone listening is going to be extremely appreciative.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for hosting us and for the Fantastic Four coming together. It's great.
I love it. Thanks for having us. Yeah, this was so fun, and I hope that it helps people. I'm sure that it will.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we will get together again soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to Beyond the Pelvis. If today's episode resonated with you, I invite you to join us inside the Pelvic Healing Circle, a supportive space for deeper healing, connection, and transformation. And if you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you took a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your words help others find this podcast and remind them that healing is possible. Until next time, stay connected to your body, trust your inner wisdom, and keep going beyond the pelvis.